Normally, your opponent's pawns are always in the way and they're stopping you from doing what you're trying to do. Sometimes they're just in the center, controlling all the squares you'd like to move your pieces to. Sometimes they're just blocking off a diagonal or a file and preventing you from attacking and getting to the king like you would like to. But what if I told you that there are times when your opponent's pawns can actually help you win the game? And if you're having a hard time thinking of how this would actually help you in a real game, well, then you need to watch this video because I'm going to give you 2 example games of how you can use your opponent's pawns to help you win. All right, first things first, before I show you 2 example games, I just want to talk real quickly about a good bishop and a bad bishop. If I played bishop to c4 and then pawn to d3, this is a good bishop because it's outside of my pawn chain. If I go back and I play d3 immediately, this is what we would call a bad bishop because it's stuck behind this pawn. This is a key idea to keep in mind as I show you these games. The pawns are usually good pieces that we can use to help us do and accomplish things, but when they're blocking our own pieces, they can actually be doing more harm than good. All right, so here's the first game I want to show you. This was a blitz game, but it illustrates an important point. So I'm going to go quickly through the opening. This is a crazy opening with the bishop f5 line, but we're going to just get to the interesting part. And let's see. Okay, right at this moment. So my queen is being attacked. I got to move it somewhere. And a normal move might be maybe back to e6, maybe over to g6, just kind of retreating and going back somewhere. I decided to go forward. Now you might say, oh yeah, that's good because you're going for the king and you're going to try to get checkmate or something with the bishop. That's partly true, but the more important reason and the main reason that I went there is to block this pawn. And the reason that blocking this pawn is so important, and this is what you have to remember, is that this bishop is now stuck. See, if we go back and if I, let's just say go here, well, now white can push this pawn up 1 or 2 squares, whatever they want to do. This bishop is now free to go out. Once the bishop can go out, now not right away because I'm attacking the pawn, but later once the bishop comes out, white can probably castle, the rook's going to come into the game, all the pieces start coming alive. When my queen is sitting here on e3, this guy can't go anywhere, which means this guy can't go anywhere. It's really, really awkward for white to play around. This is what you have to remember. There are lots of moments in chess where if you're watching, you can just plop one of your pieces down in front of your opponent's pawn, and it really makes them have a hard time developing their pieces. This is especially true for bishops. Now, my opponent realized that this was going to be a problem, and so what do you think that they tried to do? Well, they tried to get rid of the queen, right? So they're hoping that I just take, and they can just take back, push this pawn forward, bring the bishop out, bring the rook over, and everything is good, right? So what did I do? I said, no, I don't think so. I'm going to play bishop c5. So that now, if they take it, guess what? I'm going to have another piece taking the spot. That's what happened. And then again, look what my opponent's trying to do. Get rid of that piece because they know that they need that guy to move so they can complete their development. So what do you think I played now? You can probably guess the move. That's right. I played rook over. Because guess what? If they take me, I'm going to take back with another piece. And notice how I have 2 pieces now, the knight and the rook, that are very active and doing something, and still white has not been able to use their pieces. Okay, and again, white is hoping that I move my rook back, right? Because if I move back, well, now they can play e4, bishop comes out, and white doesn't really have any problems. Okay, so what do you think I did? Knight to d5. See how the whole game is kind of revolving around, can I keep my rook in that really annoying spot? And remember, it has to do with the fact that the bishop can't go through their own pawns. Like if this pawn was just gone, well, then white would be happy they could bring the bishop out, the rook could get into the game. So now eventually my opponent figured out a way to kind of go around this, and so I didn't just immediately win the game, and we played on. But you saw how I really had an advantage for several moves there because my opponent's pieces were just locked up. Okay, let me show you another example. All right, so here's the next example, and this one has a really nice end to it. So let's go bishop b5 Sicilian. Okay, we did some stuff. We traded off some pieces here. And right at this moment in the game, my opponent played f6. And a normal looking move in this position would probably be maybe sliding one of my rooks to the center, maybe playing, I don't know, f4 or h3 to create a space for my king. There's lots of things that you could do. There's only one really, really strong move. And what I played in the game was bishop to b6. And you might say, okay, like what exactly are you doing? Well, the whole point behind this move, is that I'm blocking this pawn. I'm just blocking this pawn. Because if I don't do that, Okay, let's just say I played this move, rook over. Black's going to play b5. And next move, they're going to play bishop b7. This bishop's going to be very annoying for me. Rook's probably going to come to c8. The rook's going to be very annoying for me. And black has a totally fine position. Okay, if we go back and we compare that to what happened in the game, I played bishop to b6. How is black going to develop this bishop? Well, it's not going to be this way, right? This pawn can't move. So if they want to develop that, they have to move this pawn. But that's a problem because if they go here, I'm just going to take it. I have 2 attackers, only 1 defender. They don't want to do that. And if they go to d6, well, now I'm just going to slide a rook over. And I'm eventually going to just win this pawn. So for example, if they try to develop bishop c7, guess what? That's a goner. I'm just going to take it. So it really puts black in a big bind as to how exactly do I go about developing, my bishop and my rook. Okay. Again, all has to do with the fact that this pawn's in the way. If this pawn was gone, black could just bring the bishop here, find the rook over somewhere, and start doing stuff. Okay, so let's see how the game actually played out. When it did play d6, I brought this rook over, and then they went king here. Do you know why they moved the king there? Because they realize that this is such a big problem. They're trying to go to c6 and get rid of the bishop, right? Because if I let them do that, like let's just say I play a random move like rook here, and they go king c6, now I have to move my bishop. Or actually I could play knight a4, which is a pretty nice move. But if I had to move it, let's just say, well, then everything gets easier for black. Now black can play b5 and start, getting the pieces active, okay? So what did I play in the game here? I played a4, and black went king c6, and I played a5. So again, I didn't want to let black move that bishop because that bishop is doing a very important thing, blocking the pawn, okay? So let's see what happened. Bishop to e7. I'm going to just double up rooks on this, weakness here. And notice how black can't really defend the pawn. Another benefit, my bishop is kind of controlling that square. So you see how when you have these pieces kind of deep in the enemy territory, blockading the pawns, it's really, really, really strong. All right, so let's see what happened. And now I had a little tactical trick here. Black was trying to trade this off, but I was able to, take here with check, which was very nice. And again, look at this. Now, my pawn is blockading this pawn, which is stopping this guy from coming out. Look at this rook in the corner. I mean, look at that. So then we had rook down here. This guy's attacked. I'm about to take it, so black has to trade. And look at this amazing position. And it all has to do with the fact that this pawn is blocking, black's pieces. The bishop's pinned, so it can't move. The king is stuck, again, because the pawn's in the way. The rook is stuck. The only thing black could try was to, bring the rook up and over like this. And then they just resigned before I even got to play. Because I was going to play here next move. And check this out. The rook can go there. And again, everything is still stuck. If the king moves, I take a checkmate. Can't take this. The only thing black can do is move these pawns, right? Now, so all I have to do is bring my king over here. Pop my knight in. And then this is going to be checkmate. So as an example, I go here. Black does some random stuff with their pawns. It doesn't really matter. I just keep moving my king. They can even take this, doesn't matter. They can push. I'm gonna go here. Check this out. They can even do this. Knight d7 check, checkmate. And all that craziness started way, 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 way back when I made the decision to play the bishop into b6, blocking this pawn from moving forward, right? Like it seems like such a small thing. Like who cares if the pawn moves to b5? It's huge. It's a huge deal because you want to get this bishop stuck, which in turn keeps the rook stuck. So I hope you guys can see the power of blocking your opponent's pawns and using their own pawns against them. This is an idea that I didn't catch on to for a long time in my chess career, and when I finally learned how this can be useful, it's game changing. So now I kind of have this instinct. I obviously I didn't calculate all that stuff out. I just knew that okay, if I can keep this pawn from moving and prevent black from developing the bishop where they would like to develop, it's probably going to be good for me. So I just played bishop b6, and then I kind of figured out the rest as the game went along. So I hope those examples really help you guys and you learn how to use your pieces to blockade your opponent's pawns and jam up their position. As always, thanks for watching. Stay sharp, play smart, take care.